The Empress found a woman for her husband herself. This is not a metaphor, it is a fact. And now, how she came to this. He slept in the next room, alone. She sat by the window and understood. This could not continue. No scandal, no divorce, no scene of jealousy. She would do something else. A few months later, there would be a woman beside her husband, permanent, calm, convenient, and, the strangest part, she would not object. Later, the court would whisper. Much later, biographers would write, "The Empress of Austria-Hungary, one of the greatest empires in Europe, a woman who wore the crown of 2 kingdoms." And yet no one ever answered the main question. Why did the Empress allow this to happen? Today, you will hear the story of a marriage that began like a fairy tale and ended as a contract of silence. The story of a woman they called a romantic dreamer, who made one of the coldest decisions of her time. We will see how love turned into distance, why Sisi chose not to fight, and what step she took, a step that will surprise even those who know her fate well. And at the end, I will ask a question with no clear answer, and tell you how it all ended. It will be unexpected, because sometimes betrayal is not the worst thing. This story is too often told the wrong way. With smiles, with a Viennese ball, with the phrase, "He chose her for love." And that is true, but not the whole truth. Franz Joseph was already emperor at 18. His life was measured by minutes, audiences, papers, military reports, even feelings, by protocol. And then, she appeared. She was not supposed to be there. By agreement between 2 mothers, sisters by blood, Franz Joseph was meant to marry Helene, the elder daughter of Duchess Ludovica of Bavaria. Helene was prepared for this role, raised for it, waiting for it. 15-year-old Elisabeth came to Bad Ischl only as company, to watch her sister's engagement, nothing more, but Franz Joseph saw her, and everything shifted. He refused Helene, publicly, before the court. The older sister was humiliated, the younger confused, the mother furious over ruined plans. But the emperor had decided. Young, awkward, laughing at the wrong moments, without ambition, without courtly manners. She did not try to please, and that was exactly why he chose her. Later, this choice would be romanticized. They would say the emperor allowed himself a feeling for the first time, that he went against the court, against his mother, against calculation. But almost no one would say the most important thing. This choice was not made for a marriage. It was made for a moment. Franz Joseph fell in love with an image, with lightness, freshness, life. He did not ask himself whether this girl could endure life beside a throne. Sisi became empress at 16, not too early by age, too early by inner readiness. In the first 13 years of marriage, she gave birth to 4 children. The first was Sophia, taken from her immediately after birth. The mother-in-law decided the young empress could not cope. Sisi was not allowed to choose names. Sophia died at 2 years old. During a journey Sisi did not want to take the children on, but was forced to. Then came Gisela. Then Rudolf, the heir. He too was taken away, raised by the court's harsh rules. Only the 4th child, Maria Valeria, did Sisi manage to keep. She raised her herself, far from Vienna, her small victory. The only child who belonged to her, not the empire. She loved horseback riding, mountains, movement, and received instead ceremonies, rules, and a mother-in-law who controlled everything, from daily schedules to the upbringing of her children. Her beauty became a legend during her lifetime. A waist, 19 inches, hair to her heels, so heavy it caused pain. Each morning, 3 hours. Styling, massage, exercises. She weighed herself several times a day. She barely ate. Broth, milk. Europe admired her, but Sisi hated her reflection. After 30, she forbade new portraits. Beauty became not a gift, but an obligation, another cage. She understood early. She was not expected here as a person. She was expected to behave, to be silent, to gesture correctly. Every mistake was recorded, every weakness discussed, and the harder she tried to comply, the more clearly she felt herself disappearing. From the outside, it still looked like a fairy tale. Portraits, journeys, applause. But inside the marriage, something failed almost immediately. Franz Joseph wanted closeness, regular, predictable, obligatory. For him, it was simple. Marriage means being beside means together. He did not see pressure. He saw order. And Sisi felt not love, but demand. As he had been taught, a wife is part of the system. And Sisi was suffocating. Not because of him personally, but because of the idea that her body and her life no longer belonged to her. She began to disappear, first emotionally, then physically. Long journeys, treatments, reasons no one checked, and every departure made one thing clearer. They lived parallel lives, not a shared one. It was in this period that a thought began to form in her mind. A thought she herself did not accept at first, a thought most women would call impossible. But then it seemed the only way not to destroy everything completely. Franz Joseph waited. He hoped it would pass, that she would grow up, adapt, return. But Sisi did not return, not truly. And it was at this moment, when outwardly the marriage still existed, but inwardly was already empty, that she would make a decision later called strange, cold, too adult. No one knew yet that this choice would change them both. When Sisi left, the court exhaled. With her, the tension disappeared, and with it, the warmth. Franz Joseph remained. In the evenings, the palace felt especially large, too large for one person, vast halls where footsteps sounded louder than thoughts. He returned from receptions not to conversation, not to warmth, but to silence that nothing filled. He still rose early, signed papers, received ministers. The empire stood on order, and he was its embodiment. Franz Joseph was used to living alone, but he was not used to being lonely. He did not need passion. He did not need romance. He needed someone who did not disappear, and his marriage did. A distance formed between them, one that letters could not close. They wrote to each other, politely, correctly, sometimes even tenderly. But letters do not replace presence, and even less, closeness. Sisi could not endure the court. Every glance felt like control, every gesture, an evaluation. She felt not like a woman, but a symbol, a function, an obligation. Sometimes on long journeys she thought of her sister, of Helene, who did marry, not an emperor, but a prince of a lesser house. How would life have turned out if Franz Joseph had chosen the one he was meant to choose? Perhaps Helene would have coped better. Perhaps she would not have suffocated within these walls. Perhaps this place had never been meant for Sisi. The physical side of marriage became heavy for her, not shameful, burdensome, like another demand that could not be discussed. She made no scenes, no accusations, no requests. She simply left. Farther, longer, months, years. He needed a woman beside him. Not an empress, not a symbol, but a living person. Someone who would listen, sit beside him in the evening, not vanish without explanation. And here the most important part begins. Sisi understood. If nothing changed, it would only get worse. Not louder, colder. Because the most dangerous crisis in a marriage is not a quarrel. It is the quiet habit of absence. She saw. He was not unfaithful out of passion. He was not seeking adventure. He was seeking presence. And then a choice stood before her, one rarely spoken out loud. Either she continued to pretend nothing was happening until one day everything exploded. Or she admitted the obvious. She could not give him what he needed. Most in her place would have chosen to fight. Jealousy. Control. Sisi chose something else. This else did not look like betrayal. It looked like the rejection of illusions. And very soon, this rejection would gain a specific name and a specific face. And then she did something no empress had done before. She began to look for a woman for him. Herself. This woman was not chosen suddenly. There was no flash, no moment after which nothing could be undone. On the contrary, everything happened slowly, carefully, as if each step was tested for safety. She did not burst into their lives with scandal. She did not arrive from secret passion. She entered quietly. Katharina Schratt was an actress. She was 32 when she first appeared in the emperor's life. Married, with a child, no famous name, she played at the Burg Theater. Not a star, but reliable, professional. Franz Joseph first saw her on stage, then at a reception, then more often. She was not a beauty in the classical sense, but she had what Sisi did not: calm. She did not run away, did not demand the impossible, did not disappear mid-conversation to leave the country. With her, one could simply be. For an emperor who had spent his entire life playing a role, this mattered more than passion. She knew how to listen. She had no ambitions, no desire to take someone else's place. She did not demand decisions, did not speak of the future, did not ask questions that had no answers. That was why she was convenient, and that was why she was acceptable. All of this began while Sisi was far away, geographically and emotionally. And here something happens that makes this story different. Sisi knew. She knew not only the fact, she understood this relationship could become permanent, and she did not stop them. She allowed them to become permanent, without secrecy, without hiding. She asked no unnecessary questions, made no scenes, did not demand a conversation. In 1886, Sisi personally wrote Schratt an invitation. Later, she wrote to her husband, "I am glad that someone is beside you when I am not." Schratt appeared at court, sat beside the emperor, accompanied him. All of this with the empress still alive. The court did not know how to react. Some admired her composure. Others whispered that she had lost her mind. From the outside, it looked strange, even humiliating. But inside, it was a contract. Unspoken, rigid. There was no sacrifice in it. No noble gesture that historians like to describe later. It was an admission of defeat before an open war had even begun. It was as if Sisi said, "I cannot be there, but I will not stand in the way." There was no generosity in this, and no sacrifice in the usual sense. It was the choice of someone who no longer believed the past could be restored. And yet, this is where the illusion hides. Sisi may have thought that by stepping back, she would be free, that by no longer being a wife in the full sense, she would stop suffering. But this decision had a price. At the time, she believed the price would be small, that the pain would end once the obligation to stay disappeared. But the most expensive decisions rarely charge immediately. Sometimes they wait until a person believes everything is under control. The most dangerous thing about such a compromise, it seems reasonable, until it becomes clear that by giving space to another, you do not free the room. You disappear from it. And this realization would come later. At first, Sisi felt relief, almost physical. She no longer had to return to a place where every touch felt like duty, no longer had to explain her absence. Everything seemed simpler, but simplicity is not always peace. The emperor was provided for. The court, calm, no scandals. On paper, a perfect solution. But life does not live on paper. Sisi spent 200, sometimes 250 days a year on the road. Europe, North Africa, Greece. Franz Joseph, over an entire lifetime, almost never left Vienna. The stronger the presence of another woman beside the emperor, the less visible Sisi became. Gradually, they stopped waiting for her. The habit of living without someone forms faster than one expects. The road became her form of existence. On the road, she did not need to conform. There, she was neither wife nor empress, only herself. For a short time, she obsessively watched her body. Weight, food, exercise, hours before the mirror, as if trying to prove, first of all to herself, that she still existed. But beside the emperor, she was no longer there. There was calm, routine, evening conversation, and Sisi knew it. The most painful part, she was not erased, she was replaced silently. Franz Joseph continued to respect her, but she was turning not into part of his life, but into part of his memory. An image one can love from a distance. He wrote to her, worried about her, kept her portraits, but lived differently. And the farther it went, the clearer it became. She had not freed herself from marriage. She had simply stepped out of it, leaving her place empty. And emptiness rarely remains empty. The realization did not come as pain. It came as fatigue. Fatigue from no longer being searched for, from no longer being waited for, from no longer being counted on. It came in silence. When Sisi returned to the palace and saw how everything worked without her, how the emperor was calm, how beside him there was always a woman who did not disappear. Once she entered a salon and heard laughter. The emperor was laughing. She could not remember the last time she had heard that. The most frightening thing was not that another woman stood beside him. It was that without her, the world kept working. But one day, that world broke. In 1889, their only son ended his life. His name was Rudolf. He was 30. In the hunting lodge at Meierling, he shot himself together with his lover. She was 17. Officially, a heart attack. Then, madness. The truth was hidden as long as possible. Sisi was not told at once. The news came in parts. First, that he was ill. Then, that it was serious. And only then, that he was gone. They say she did not scream. She froze, and then said, "Now I have no reason to return." After Meierling, she finally stopped being part of their world. Even mourning she carried alone, far from the court. And still, she did not return. The compromise that seemed mature turned into slow self-removal. She was no longer wife, no longer rival, no longer the center of his life. She became background, beautiful, respected, but replaceable. Franz Joseph did not stop loving her. In his understanding of love, he continued to speak of her as the only one. But love that does not require presence does not save from loneliness. Sisi paid for her decision not with humiliation, but with disappearance. Gradually, she understood. By yielding voluntarily, she had not kept control. She had left the game. Only at the end did it become clear. The price of silence was higher than the price of conflict. She lived a long life, longer than their marriage as closeness, longer than the illusion of a fairy tale. Sisi survived scandals, losses, the deaths of children, a loneliness invisible from the outside. She will be remembered as beautiful, free, unruly. That image proved convenient. There was no room in it for doubt, for compromise, for quiet defeats. Legends do not like nuance, and her life was woven entirely from it. September 10th, 1898, Geneva. A random anarchist, a sharpened file, a blow to the heart. She walked another 100 meters before she fell. The killer's name was Luigi Lucchini, an Italian anarchist without money, without purpose. He came to Geneva to kill someone royal. Who exactly did not matter. Sisi was nearby by chance. She was walking to the steamboat without guards. As usual, she hated escort. Lucchini stepped forward, struck, and ran. Sisi did not even understand what had happened. She thought she had been pushed. She stood up, kept walking. Only on board did she lose consciousness. When they loosened the corset, they saw blood. The file had gone straight into the heart. She was 60. Franz Joseph learned from a telegram. They say he kept repeating, "You cannot imagine how much I loved her." That evening beside him was Katharina Schratt. Franz Joseph outlived her by 18 years. He never recovered. Until the end, he kept her rooms untouched. Every morning, he looked at her portrait. But beside him, there was still Katharina Schratt, to the very end. Her blood still flows through the royal houses of Europe, through her daughters, Gisela and Maria Valeria, into Austrian and Bavarian aristocracy. But Rudolph's line ended that night at Mayerling. With him ended the direct line of succession. The throne passed to the emperor's nephew, Franz Ferdinand, the same man whose murder 25 years later would unleash a world war and destroy the empire for good. Thus, the empress chosen for love gradually chose disappearance over conflict. She did not fight for her husband, not because she was weak, but because fighting would have made her someone she refused to be. She chose silence over humiliation, preserved dignity, but lost her place beside him. Thus, a woman Europe adored as a myth stood alone inside the most luxurious empire of the continent. And now the main question is not historical, it is personal. If love demands that you disappear so it can continue, is that strength or defeat? Write in the comments.